Well, next week, Australia will take up consideration of their Combating Anti-Semitism, Hate, and Extremism bill in Parliament. This is one of the most draconian pieces of legislation to hit the English-speaking world. The Green Party has now come out posting their concerns, saying they will not support it in its current form, and that it may have some unintended consequences. You think? It's funny. Their concerns seem to go the opposite. They don't think maybe it goes far enough. They think, hey, why are we just covering like religious Jews, like against anti-Semitism? Why shouldn't we also cover LGBTQ plus? Like, let's put everything we can into this hate speech bucket. Okay. Have they gone completely insane in Australia? Here to help us understand what is happening is Maria Z. Welcome back to the show from Z Media. Great to have you here, keeping her eye on the pulse of everything what's happening there. How close are we to seeing these things actually passed, Maria? Great to see you.
Great to see you as well. Thank you for having me back. It's yet to be determined at this stage. It looks like the Greens do want some amendments made, as you said. The opposition party, which is actually, the party in power at the moment is Labour, which is kind of like the Democrats here. The opposition is the Liberal Party, which is actually supposed to be more like Republicans. But Australia is very similar to the US in the sense that what you have most of the time is a uniparty. So the opposition, the Liberals, aka like the Republicans, are saying we're not really supporting this. We actually want to introduce our own version of this. Whichever way you turn, they're all saying seemingly that it doesn't go far enough or they want to amend it in some ways. No one's saying, actually, no, this should be abolished altogether. And it should be, Clayton, because there is no such thing as hate speech. Hate speech is simply speech that certain people don't like. And guess what? You're not God. You don't get to decide who is and isn't allowed to say what they want to say. And it's just insane to me. But what we do have is this lockstep approach across multiple countries. We have similar pushes here in the US for these types of hate speech laws. So people in America should be paying attention to what's happening over there because similar arguments are being made here. Now, if you want, I can take you through some of the most egregious points in this bill. It says that it criminalizes speech that merely causes fear, even if no harm occurs, and it results in 5 years imprisonment. This is very similar to previous laws that they've passed, which suggest that if you say anything quote-unquote reckless, you could go to jail without trial. It defines public space so broadly that it will include anything that you say on the internet. The law states that it's irrelevant whether hatred actually occurs or whether anyone truly felt fear. You are guilty.
How are you going to measure that, right? It's 5 years in prison because you caused fear. Someone had fear based on something you said on the internet, but then we don't really care if we can even measure your fear. So who's going to enforce
that's
this?
right.
Crazy.
And even if no hatred actually occurred, it's basically the government saying we get to decide unilaterally what we do and don't like. That's what this bill is. They say that you're guilty of displaying a prohibited symbol unless you can prove a religious, academic, or journalistic exemption. I do want to talk about the implications for Christianity in this bill as well, Clayton, because I think Australia is moving to criminalize Christianity, and that seems to be clear in this bill. I'll get to that. It says that the Australian Federal Police Minister can declare quote-unquote prohibited groups without any procedural fairness. So they decide who is and isn't prohibited. Obviously, this will have implications for any political parties that rise up or community action groups. People that form groups to push back on legislation, for example, they could suddenly declare they're prohibited or hostile to the government. And the powers can actually extend to actions that occurred outside Australia. So say you're a citizen that says, it's no longer safe to live in this country, I'm leaving. And on top of that, they can actually do it based on retroactive conduct. So no one knows how far back they want to go. Yes, no one knows how far back they want to go, but that's included.
So you guys have heard of the bearskin hoodie, right? Upcoming holidays. And this thing looks awesome. Ready, that's a win-win. So do yourself a favor. You get a link, send straight % off. Text the word redacted to 36912. Wow, you could go back in your social media feed years and find something that they find offensive, which may have caused fear. How are they going to measure? It may have caused fear then, but we don't know. How do we quantify this? We have no idea. We'll just
How
throw
do you
that into
commit
a
a
bucket.
crime? How do you commit a crime before something is law? That it is just pure insanity. And mind you, it's similar to what they passed in Canada.
Right.
Is it Bill C93? I think. Forgive me if I'm wrong about that one, but there are very similar bills in Canada. And the similarity of this bill, Clayton, it's very interesting. So they say that there are religious protections that they've included in there, but during a joint committee hearing, Sarah Chidgey from the Attorney General's Department expressly stated that protections are there for religious groups such as Jews or Sikhs, but not for Catholics and definitely not for Christians more broadly. So what I want to point out here is that all of these hate speech bills that keep passing in these Western countries are at their very core anti-Christian bills. How do we know that? Well, we simply have to go to other examples like Canada and the UK to understand how they keep doing this. The example out of Canada, it's really egregious. They actually used an example of an Islamic preacher who basically called for violence against Zionist aggressors. This was his words. And then he claimed that his remarks were a prayer and therefore could not, under the existing law, be classed as hate speech. The prosecutor actually agreed that this was his religious prayer and he could not be prosecuted. So what they did was they said, we need hate speech laws. But what they did was expressly carve out in their legislation exemptions for Islamic preachers, but banned certain verses of the Bible. And that's what Australia's doing as well. They've carved out exemptions for Islamic preachers, but they're saying that Christians will not be protected. In the UK, just today I heard the report that a man, there was a protest, people were saying, God is great in Arabic, which is an Islamic statement, and a man responded, God bless you, and he was arrested, Clayton. The man who said God bless you was arrested. These Western countries are coming after Christianity with these bills.
Remind me never to sneeze in the UK, for crying out loud. Oh, this is insanity. So criminalizing Christianity, and I imagine symbols, maybe even like the cross. Would the cross rise to the level of being some sort of a problem for them based on these symbols, unless you have some sort of academic, as you pointed out, reason for studying it? Or is it just, or are they keeping it to the swastika?
At the moment, they've criminalized symbols like the swastika, but I think the reason why they keep adding the terms prohibited symbols into all of these bills is because of a future attempt to, or a future plan to criminalize Christianity. As we keep seeing, and I'll say it again, these countries bring in these hate speech bills. They are, of course, about controlling the population and making sure people don't say what they don't want them to say. And more broadly, it feeds into that digital ID ecosystem that we spoke about last time, where all of your words that you express or even think will be form part of your digital dossier and eventually be used against you in a social credit system. But what keeps ending up as the case is that Christians get arrested for praying outside of an abortion clinic, for example, or Bible verses get banned. It always ends up protecting all religions and Christians being treated as criminals in every single case.
I was going through, like, the Green Party's,